I'm Joseph.
And I'm Nick.
This is Fish Jelly.
Yeah.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Okay. This is a pre-recorded episode, one to be used in the event we're unavailable to record.
Which is about to
during
be
our normal schedule.
It's about to be imminent, yes.
But over the past couple of weeks, we received questions regarding how we met. And I know we've talked about it on more than one live, but I don't know which one to direct people to. Do you want to answer the question, how we met?
Oh.
Since our romance is an inspiration to so many. And I think people want to duplicate this magic. Although I think it's a little naive to think that you can do what I've done. But no, anyway.
Oh.
Do you want to explain how we've met?
Let's roll up some sleeves first and show that part in Jaws where all the men are showing their scars to one another, because there's some scars, baby.
That's how you want to start.
No, you need to. It's nothing's perfect. There's always something roiling.
Also, you think you have to hurt me in order for us to be happy in this relationship?
No, it's not. People unintentionally hurt one another.
How did we meet?
It's always the context is malicious or not. There's always something roiling in the deep, in the dark. We met before. Well, it's kind of more complicated than it sounds, because I remember the first time I saw you, which was probably about a year before we actually met. And we both have different perspectives of this. So I was dating a man. Do I want to say his name? No. I was 21 and he was 36. This man also had a partner, and both those partners were, I guess you'd call that polyamorous. That was not a term people used then. They both had other boyfriends named Nick, and I was one of those Nicks. Anyway, we walked into this bar in downtown St. Paul. I think at the time it was called Trick, and then it changed to something called Camp after that. Anyway, you were sitting at Trick by yourself, and the person I was with said something to me about I should go talk to you. And I said, oh, that person will never be interested in me. But I remember looking at you. And then a year later, it turns out we had a mutual friend that introduced us to each other at a bar in downtown Minneapolis called The Saloon. And now you tell your side of that.
Well, I think the foundation of it is we had spied each other a year before we actually met. Mm-hmm. And neither of us, you were not free to interact with me because you weren't single. And I assumed that because you weren't picking up what I was putting down, you weren't interested.
Even if I was single, I wouldn't have understood that, because I was my self-esteem was in the gutter, and I would not have even noticed. I didn't know. I was clueless about anybody hitting on me. I was completely in my head and, in my early 20s. So I wouldn't have even noticed anyway. I did not have the confidence that I do today.
And I was not accustomed to seeking people's attention. It was usually my attention people were seeking. Mm-hmm. So I think the fact that I was interested in someone and they weren't seemingly interested in me bothered me a lot. Mm. So I'd resign myself to thinking I didn't like you. Because I would also see you at these house parties, mm-hmm. one in particular.
Yes.
And you were a bit standoffish. And by that point, I was already kind of over it. But when our mutual friend introduced us, we hit it off quite well.
Yes. Mm-hmm. I was riddled with social anxiety at those things, because you know what? Gays aren't very friendly. And I would go because I had one friend I felt quite close to at the time. We're no longer on speaking terms, but he's also an alcoholic. Anyway, I was not comfortable in my own skin, for one. And certainly nobody else seemed to be very good at being kind of a social glue at those kind of events, which is why I think now that I like myself, for lack of a better word or term, I take it upon myself to have that opposite energy when I am out in gay spaces, because that is, we're all out to be social. So why aren't people social anyway?
I think that's about it. We met, and I think the following night you were having a movie night.
Yeah, it was during October. So I was having two separate sets of film series in my apartment. On the weekends were horror films, and during the week were gay films. And I was having a screening of Psycho, and I invited you over, and you came. And then you stayed, and we watched Tu Wong Fu after that. And then we went out and had a drink, made out at the bar, and I invited you out. I asked you out on a date officially.
I don't remember Tu Wong Fu or going out. I do remember going on a date to a restaurant in downtown. Minneapolis.
It was called Spill the Wine.
I remember picking you up and...
Yes, you had that Hummer.
A what?
Wait, what was it called? What was that big thing?
A Land Rover.
A Land Rover, whatever. It was that big Jeep-like thing that was...
A Hummer.
Whatever. It was large. And you had that air freshener that said, I love my penis. And...
Oh, I forgot about that.
Yeah, I'm glad you drove as well. And...
We're not even going to talk about your car.
I had a Pontiac Grand Am. That's the worst car.
You had a Grand Prix.
No.
No, I'm sorry. You're right. You would know your car. I'm sorry. You had a Grand Am.
That's shade.
No, yeah. No. I shouldn't have doubted you would know your own car.
Well, I mean, I don't pay attention to other people's shit, car-wise or name brand, whatever. I don't care.
No, the other day I pulled up right next to you while you were standing on the sidewalk like a prostitute, and you looked right at my car and just kind of like ignored me. And so I finally had to roll down my window like, hey.
Your windows are tinted.
First of all, my windows aren't that tinted. And also I drive a pretty unique car.
It was at night. I'm not staring at cars because I'm not a prostitute. So I'm not mean mugging whoever is in my vicinity. I'm just do.
Okay, but to be clear, this car came out of the driveway you live in.
But I didn't see, I was not in an angle or could hear the garage door open. So I didn't know. I was off my own little
Your
head.
spatial awareness is very poor.
Okay. Anyway, what was I going to say?
We went on a date.
Oh, and then we drove from...
I recall you ordering mussels maybe?
No.
Or scallops.
The scallops. And you don't eat seafood. And I didn't know that at the time. And this was back, again, I was 23 at this point. And I... paid for all my own bills. I was a self-sufficient young person, but I didn't have like a ton of money. I think I was making $40K a year then. And I had just moved into my own apartment for the first time a couple months prior in Uptown. But we went to this dinner and I got this, I guess, a fancier dish at the time. You didn't know this, but I remember I bought, and you know how I feel about seafood. I like it. 2 scallops. They had 2 scallops on this, like, at the time, it was probably like $25 pasta. And I remember being so pissed.
Do you recall who paid for the bill?
I did.
You paid for all of it?
Yeah, I invited you on the date. That's what a gentleman does.
That's right.
Mm-hmm. And then you drove me to an ice cream place that was in downtown St. Paul.
Oh, on Grand.
Yeah.
I think I recall that.
I'm forgetting the name of what that was, though.
Oh.
But that was a regular place. It was that, or we would go there. Sebastian Joe's was a place.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway.
Yeah, so that's how we met. A year of kind of glances and discord, and
I was completely unaware of the discord. I just thought I was ugly.
I wasn't fully upset. I was just like, oh, this guy like kind of ignored me. So I was embarrassed, and
I was
because the queer community in Minneapolis is quite small and everyone goes to the same places.
Mm-hmm.
I was a little miffed, like, oh, now I have to see this person whenever I go out, and because I'm not accustomed to approaching people, I don't know, I felt rejected, I guess. And I don't know that I've ever been socially awkward, but I think I have an attitude problem. So the minute I'm not into something, I don't want to do it. So I felt like the few options I had to socialize might go away because you were at some of them.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, there were a lot of other things going on too. So I wasn't fully distracted by it, but here we are.
Yeah.
an inspiration to millions.
See, it was you who willed it into existence. It was cursed. Don't you remember? You were there at the bar with your little friend.
Our friend?
No, I didn't know him then. So he was your friend. You were at the bar the night we finally
Robert?
met. No, Miguel.
Oh, hey girl.
Anyway,
wherever you are.
Back then, that bar, I don't know if this is the case anymore. The saloon had a hotel upstairs.
That's right.
The people that would go up there were, doing other things, I think. But I'd never been up there. We went up there and we were like
the 3 of us.
I think there were 4 of us. Wasn't there somebody else there too? Blake, was he there too?
Okay.
Anyway, we went up there and I remember this great big cornucopia in the lobby that we were kind of fiddling with, and whoever was manning the desk was, if you guys aren't going to check in, leave.
Oh, I forgot about that place.
Yep, I remember that night. Anyhow.
The secret film this week was your choice, and you chose the 1967 erotic psychological drama, Belle de Jour, directed by a Luis Buñuel.
Yes.
It stars the lovely Catherine Deneuve.
Mm-hmm.
What is it about? A frigid young housewife decides to spend her midweek afternoons as a prostitute. I feel like I know this woman. And she's a gay man. And she lives on La Brea in Santa Monica. And her name is Steve. But anyway.
Yeah. So I have been in love with this film for a long time. And
well, I should say my relationship to this
yeah,
movie.
tell us yours. Mm-hmm.
Because for many years now,
since you've known me,
there has been a poster of Belle de Jour somewhere in our living space.
Yes.
Most recently in our kitchen above the beverage refrigerator, this poster existed until I switched it out for Faye Grimm.
With Parker Posey.
Because where Faye Grimm used to be in the entry to our home, we replaced that with a very expensive oil painting of the two of us with our cat, which was an impulse buy that was, I think we've explained it before.
Yes.
How I feel like I got roped into spending thousands of dollars on an oil painting because I didn't want people to think I was low budget. But it is a very nice portrait of us. We have a picture of it, like the digital version, on our Instagram. But in reality, it is pretty impressive. Is it worth what we spent? But I guess it's something nice to have.
It looks like it could be the advertisement for some kind of sitcom about lawyers that represent animals in court.
Yeah, like queer lawyers who advocate for hairless cats. But I have stared at the poster of Belle de Jour featuring Catherine Deneuve sitting topless. Her back is facing us with her head tilted.
Yeah, and she's staring into your soul.
Never was curious what this movie was about. I couldn't have told you what I thought it was about. I knew it was French, and so probably along, most French films are kind of bleak or psychosexual in some way, is what I've learned. So I'm not surprised at the premise, but I guess it was about damn time.
Yes, at one point when you first started dating me, you said of all the posters that everything I had represented somewhere in the apartments back then, you were like, I'd like to watch all of these one day. So we're still doing that.
Well, of course, my interest has waned as I've been sucked dry. But
yes,
what is your relationship to this film?
This was the film that because I collect Catherine Deneuve films, actually. I have a shelf dedicated to her.
She's a collector.
Yes, Morgan Freeman from Kiss the Girls. And as by Isabelle Huppert, Barbara Stanwyck, Joan Crawford, Betty Davis, Sigourney Weaver, Isabelle Huppert. Anyway, Catherine, I remember when I purchased this, it was as a DVD at Barnes & Noble in Duluth, Minnesota. I had my driver's license and I was driving all over Sam Hain, as a previous generation used to say. And I remember buying this on DVD the same day I bought Michael Haneke's 1997 Funny Games. And both of those films left kind of an indelible mark, if you will. But
indubitably,
this is, I knew who she was already because we were kind of a big movie going household, even though my parents weren't watching international cinema. But my mom would talk about Catherine Deneuve and how beautiful she was. And I watched this alone in my room and I was kind of gobsmacked by how beautiful I thought she was. And then, of course, what also appealed to me was this kind of seedy, sinister, depressing, titillating tale of prostitution, because that's also a recurring theme in films and stories I seem to be drawn to.
The story. It's pretty simple. Catherine Deneuve plays a woman named Séverine, which I know someone with that name, and I've always thought it was a really beautiful name. I wonder if it's common in France, but I do think Séverine is a beautiful name. So Séverine appears to have this perfect bourgeois life because she's married to this medical doctor, Pierre, played by a very handsome
Jean Sorel.
They live in a beautiful apartment. Of course, they're financially stable, and it would appear they have some sort of social status.
Yeah, they have a maid.
She can't bring herself to have sex with her husband. Rather, she's consumed by these elaborate fantasies involving humiliation, bondage, violence, domination. And we'll get to the details, but after hearing about a brothel that caters to wealthy clients, she goes and checks it out. And this bitch picks up a shift.
Yep.
She says she can work weekdays 2 to 5 p.m. Hard stop at 5 while her husband is at work. The madam of the brothel, whose name is Anaïs.
Madame Anaïs, yeah.
Who's also a very beautiful woman.
Played by Genevieve Page, who just passed away a little over a year ago on Valentine's Day, 2025. But yes, she's, gorgeous. She
offers Séverine the gig and says, you need a working name. So let's make it Belle de Jour, which means beauty of the day.
Mm-hmm.
She starts working at the brothel, but initially sort of panics with her first client. She returns. Her next encounter is awkward and a little scary, but then begins to kind of enjoy the clients.
Mm-hmm.
And it would seem it's not because it's fulfilling anything romantically, but because it's allowing her fantasies to exist in reality without threatening her sort of perfect little domestic life.
Yes, I think this film really, before that was a term we would use as binaries, about compartmentalization, to be certain.
The more we talked about this film, obviously, after we watched it and before we hit record, I do think this movie is excellent and there is a lot to ponder, but I'm starting to think, did the brothel become therapeutic for her?
I think at first it's kind of rudimentary exposure therapy, but it did. I think she is allowed to access a part of herself that the society, the class and the society that she belongs to would never have allowed otherwise.
As she works at the brothel, she becomes more sexually comfortable and her marriage seems to improve.
Yes, it does. She becomes more affectionate. Something about Deneuve playing this icy, cold, frigid woman is that how Deneuve had already been characterized, having kind of blown up 3 years prior in The Umbrellas of Cherbourg, directed by Jacques Demy.
So it seems like everything's going well until Marcel shows up. And I'm still not quite sure how I feel about him, but he is young. He's violent, cocky.
Mm-hmm.
He's a criminal.
Mm-hmm.
So he's very different from the wealthy older men who visit the brothel. He actually feels dangerous and he becomes obsessed with Séverine.
He's played by Pierre Clementi.
And this crazy bitch becomes emotionally entangled with him.
Yes.
Because he kind of, and we'll get to it, but these fantasies she's having, I feel like he represents the essence of the fantasy she's having, because a lot of her fantasies are, and you'll get to it too, but it seems like, and this might be a point for you to sing a little song, but it seems like she likes a strong hand.
Oh, she likes a lover with a strong hand, which is Slow Hand by the Pointer Sisters. I remember buying that on tape at a garage sale. My mother being like, I don't think you should listen to this.
But I love the Pointer Sisters. They have so many good songs.
Like
Dare Me, Automatic, I'm So Excited, Neutron Dance. Anyway.
And I like Bonnie Pointer. Anyway. Yes.
I messaged Ruth a long time ago on Twitter, but she never responded.
Oh, well. You know, didn't Eddie Murphy say that the Pointer Sisters wouldn't put out for him?
Damn. So this fantasy life she's living starts to bleed into reality because Marcel becomes jealous to the point where the brothel madam's like, girl, this is a problem. You might as well go on ahead and clock out because men like him are trouble. She does stop going to the brothel, but Marcel's crazy ass follows her home, comes into her house, and tells her, you're going to be with me. And if you don't agree, I'm going to sit here and tell your husband what you've been up to. She is able to convince him to leave and says she'll tell her husband. But Marcel's not stupid. He waits outside in a car with a gun. And when the husband comes home, Marcel shoots him. The husband survives, but he's now blind, paralyzed, and unable to speak. Marcel is ultimately killed by the police. So in the end, Séverine is left to care for her incapacitated husband. There's another character in the film. So Séverine has a homegirl, a very beautiful woman.
Renee, played by Masha Merrill.
Who you said reminded you of?
A young Cherry Jones here.
She has a man.
Who is played by the French superstar Michel Piccoli.
Who I found very unappealing.
Well, he's playing a very unappealing person.
Well, I mean, he's not attractive either.
Oh, well, he's in a ton of... He's in another great film with Deneuve that Anya Savarda directed that I loved called The Creatures. I think he won Best Actor in Venice for that, if I recall.
His name is Henri.
Henri Husson, they call him a lot.
Throughout the film, it's very clear Henri likes Séverine. And she's having fantasies about him. So she's clearly down to clown, but kind of rebuffs him. And now that she's working as a whore, you know, she's preoccupied. But one day, guess who shows up to the brothel? Henri. And he's like, oh, okay. And he says he wants to meet with her. But then when they get into a private room, he basically says, like, this is wrong. Here, take this money, but it's not for you. It's to buy your husband some chocolate. So in the end, As Severine's dressed like a nursemaid taking care of her incapacitated husband, Henri comes over and he says, I'm going to tell your husband everything because I know him and I know that he's a proud man who would be so embarrassed to think that his virtuous wife is stuck taking care of him. So I think if he knows you're a whore, he might feel better about his situation. So Henri leaves, we presume tells the husband, Pierre. And when Severine goes into the room, she sees Pierre crying. And then another big part of the story, like we've mentioned, Severine has these fantasy sequences like dreams. Mm-hmm. And they start off being quite violent towards her. But in the end, the dream is that Pierre just stands up and his blindness disappears and they casually chat about lovely things. Mm-hmm. And then the film ends. Mm-hmm. But I want you to talk about the Belles.
I think that there is an oral element to her fantasies that maybe more so serve as a mechanism for the viewer. Then I don't know how she's actually experiencing these, but the film opens. They're very sadomasochistic fantasies because I think she views sex as punishment, and I think we have to. There's a lot of conjecture going on, I think, in trying to understand how Severine's behaving or why she is. But it opens with a carriage ride where her husband pulls over in the middle of the woods and has the two coachmen drag her basically by the hair, ties her up, flogs her, and then makes them assault her. And I think that's supposed to be representative of how like sex is pressure, and there's maybe just the briefest of hints that she might have been molested as a kid by a man too, but what seems like a brief flashback. But anyway, that first sequence is also accompanied by all these noises that we will hear repeated again and again with like these jingling bells. So I think those signify when immediately for us when she is in her sexual fantasy world. Also, the sound of cats meowing, that comes up a lot. And I think that is a different sensory perception that allows her to escape from the reality that she's in.
Let me go through my notes. Catherine Deneuve is beautiful.
Stunning.
But they paint her so ghostly. And at first you commented, which made sense to me, that because of her frigid nature, perhaps they're painting her as seeming almost void of warmth. But I was expecting as she becomes more comfortable, we get a little color in her. But no, her foundation is one shade too light, and her hair, that high lift blonde, looks so synthetic, and she just washed out beyond belief. I can only imagine how beautiful she would be with some warmth in her makeup and even like a light brunette.
Well, you've seen her in Repulsion where she's a little...
That's black and white.
That's a black and white, though. I think that's supposed to be the point. She's representative because what is the pinnacle of white beauty is the blonde bombshell, right? So I think that is playing with a cliche as well, that she's the sexual stereotype that all men seemingly, supposedly lust for, and she's empty inside.
I agree.
She's a blank slate. She is the definition of a human tabula rasa.
When Severine goes to the brothel, the madam, Anais, tells her, oh, well, it's going to be a 50-50 split. And immediately says, well, I have a lot of expenses. I thought that was steep. 50-50?
50-50, girl.
Bitch, we might could do 70-30, but 50-50.
Especially for this woman that does no training and has not assessed how sexual or not this woman is.
Let's talk about the training program at this high-end brothel because it is terrible.
Well, there are only two other women. It made me want to rewatch Lizzie Borden's Working Girls, by the way, and remind us of that Sandra Bernhard film we watched. Is it called Lover Girl?
Lover Girl.
We have a podcast review out there for that, where there's that. Basically, it's a brothel that's run out of the front of a nail shop.
That's right. Yes, and one of the prostitutes is Loretta Devine.
Yes,
that's right. Mm-hmm. Yeah, we do have a podcast episode.
Anyhow, this is kind of that's like the bargain basement version of this.
I was also thinking, how ran through can you get doing 3 hours a day, 5 days a week? Probably pretty ran through.
I don't know.
I feel like I know some people with that schedule and they're pretty ran through, but
God.
Again, so Belle seems to need a firm hand because the brothel madam has to get, her pimp hand gets a little strong with her. Like,
she does.
And then of course with Marcel, he's very aggressive with her.
Yes, that seems to be what she responds to most. But the first experience, like she goes in the morning. There's an agreement made for her to come back in the afternoon, that same afternoon, and she does. And she just gets whisked away with the two other women that she meets. One of whom is played by Françoise Fabian, who's also quite notable. Charlotte, the one with the dark kind of bob. And there's this man, this loud, vulgar man who's like a candy manufacturer. And of course, he wants to taste the new girl, and she rebuffs him.
After that experience, some well-known gynecologist comes in wanting to role play, and the brothel madam doesn't explain that to Severine, Belle de Jour.
Not at all.
And then gives her some training, says, well, look through this peephole and see what he likes. It's like, bitch, we should have done this on day one, my orientation.
Because Severine's saying stuff like how disgusting this person is. Like, well, you don't
get to pick and choose, girl.
A sex worker now, right, girl?
But her third John is this Asian man who doesn't appear to speak French. And he comes in and immediately, Severine, Belle de Jour, takes a liking to him. She has her arm wrapped around him. She's kissing him on the cheek. And I was a little confused. Like, I don't know that I think she likes him. I think she had settled on the fact that she needs to come correct.
I think he's representative of that mechanism that puts her at ease. He puts her on a wavelength because of two reasons. One, he has this little bell in his hand, and get it, the homonym bell.
Sure.
He's got this bell in his hand that he's ringing, but he's also got this mysterious box that Buñuel never confirmed what was in it or not. But you hear what sounds like insects buzzing. And the other girl, Matilda, played by Maria Latour, we see her look inside the box and be like, no, not for me.
Okay, this was the most confusing part of the film and the most frustrating, because I need to know what's in that box. And you read that the director said it's whatever you want it to be.
Which is like Kiss Me Deadly in Pulp Fiction.
No. I want to know what's in that box. It was buzzing like insects. One lady said, hell no. When Belle looks at it, she kind of is like, and closes it. But then she immediately starts interacting with him.
Mm-hmm.
And then he starts dangling these bells in his hands.
And she gets kissy.
I don't understand what those bells were for.
Well, like I said, I think the bells are supposed to signal to us and her the comfort of her sexual release, because those are an element that are integral to her fantasy life.
Right, but they feel so arbitrary, like to go have sex with someone and they're like, let me clang these maracas at you.
It is arbitrary, but again, I think it's supposed to be slightly absurdist as well. And I think that it's just a key. It's really a legend for us to be able to read something about an inscrutable woman, because she is inscrutable.
Sure.
And I think, it's like, what is it? The gadfly, like insects that are used as aphrodisiacs.
Oh,
he's in a brothel hawking something that's buzzing in a box. I'm assuming it's something sexual related that's alive.
One day, Severine is sitting at a cafe when this man approaches her and says, are you single? Do you like money? I have a job for you. Meet me at this train station. It's basically a religious ceremony. And this man turns out to be a duke. He has this castle he lives in. She takes her crazy ass up there. And this man basically wants her to pretend to be a corpse in a coffin
of his dead daughter.
And then he provides like his final words to this dead body. And I knew that it probably wasn't going to end well, because the butler who greets her says, oh, don't be scared. Every woman who's ever done this. So clearly this happens regularly. They want to come back, but that's not how this works.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a one and done situation. So she does the thing. It's awkward. The end of the ceremony, I was a little confused. I couldn't tell, because it appears that the Duke goes under the coffin, and then there's gyrating that led me to think that he was masturbating.
Mm-hmm.
But I guess that wouldn't make sense if he's trying to honor his dead daughter.
Who knows?
Although if he's hiring prostitutes to sit naked in the coffin, maybe he is. But
exactly.
She grabs her money.
What's interesting about the two is there's this thing with cats that are in that scene too, and the butler is tending to them, and the tending of the cats interrupts this little ritual, and the Duke gets pissed.
Well, at the end, after Severine, Belle de Jour, has gotten dressed and is ready to leave, she's waiting in the foyer because it's raining heavily outside. And when the butler sees her, he's like, what are you doing here? Get out. He snatches that lady and kicks her out.
Mm-hmm.
Like some wino at the bar.
Yep.
Like, damn.
But it's weird. Like, I think the cats in that moment too are an element to suggest that she is for hire in this scene, but the sexual component that she likes about it is also on the outside, not being present in the room. And it also reminded me of there's these in Japan, you can hire people to do shit like that. There are these Werner Herzog did a movie about it called Family Romance LLC, and then there was that recent Brendan Fraser movie I think called Rental Family, where you can hire somebody to do things like that.
It's interesting because Severine is a woman of means. She's married to a prestigious type person and lives a fancy life, but she's allowing herself to be demeaned in a way. Mm-hmm. And I often feel sometimes like the way people talk to me is real crazy, mm-hmm. but they don't know me. So it's like, okay, talk to me like I'm dirt under your shoe. It's not worth the effort for me to get upset. But I was feeling that for her a lot. Like, it's almost like you have to relinquish that or you can't
be alive.
You can't be alive if you expect everyone to see you for who you are. Like,
right. Yeah, she basically becomes a sexual vampire, which is a nice segue to mentioning one of my favorite vampire movies with her, which is The Hunger.
So after this is where we meet Marcel. And we meet Marcel because he's the companion of another man named Hippolyte. And when he shows up at the brothel, I think he's a Spanish man. Everyone's like, oh, Lord, here comes Hippolyte. It's hit or miss with him because if he has money, he's trying to ball out. But when he doesn't, he wants everyone to do stuff for free so he can be a problem. So he shows up acting like he's big shit, and he shows up with his younger companion, Marcel.
Mm-hmm. And that is... Hippolyte is played by Francisco Rabal, who is a very notable Spanish actor and was in several of Buñuel's films. Did I mention Belle de Jour won the Venice Film Festival?
No.
Earlier that decade, Buñuel won Cannes for Viridiana, which I need to show you sometime because that's excellent as well. And Rabal is a star in that film as well as Nazarene.
What did you call Hippolyte?
I think it's pronounced Hippolyte.
Oh, okay. Well, however I'm saying it. He shows up with his little buddy, and he kind of takes a Hippolyte takes a liking to Severine, Belle de Jour. Mm-hmm. But Marcel, his younger companion, wants her. Mm-hmm. And Hippolyte is like, well, if you weren't my friend, I'd kill you on sight, but go ahead and have her. Mm-hmm. So they interact, and that's where their love affair blossoms. I still don't know what I think about Marcel. So he kind of looks like he's giving, who is the German drag queen who's super thin, who was on
Sasha?
No, he was on.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I'm talking about. Mm-hmm. He was on like Drag Race Germany or
yes,
and then he was also on UK versus the World or something. Mm-hmm. Kind of reminded me of him. He's okay. The thing that throws, hands are a big deal to me, and he has ugly hands, and then he smokes, so that's gross. And then he doesn't have teeth. He has like he has like a metal set of dentures.
It looks like a grill.
It looks like something out of Batman.
Those are installs, yeah.
And he's constantly fiddling with it, like pushing it back up. Uh-huh. But other than that, like the face, the body is appealing.
Yeah, he reminds me, he's kind of like Jonathan Rhys-Meyers. There's a wildness about him.
If he had Timothée Chalamet's body from Call Me By Your Name.
Yes, yeah, and that hair was giving me, it's very 60s. It looks like kind of a Beatles cut, but also reminded me of that band The Hives from the early 2000s.
We don't see any sex in the film, but I'm assuming he put it down for...
She was in for it, yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Oh my gosh. The brothel has a maid. And this poor lady seems special.
Muni is the woman playing her, and she was in several of Buñuel's late period films. Like, I want to say over 10 of them.
She has a daughter who appears to be like a schoolgirl, which is so upsetting because she lives in this brothel upstairs. And at least one of the patrons is like, when is your daughter old enough for me to tickle? And it gives her like a tip, like, don't forget, I want her. It's pretty upsetting.
Yeah, that's Francisco Hippolyte. Mm-hmm.
So as the situationship between Belle de Jour and Marcel heats up, she has another one of her fantasies where there's a duel. Mm-hmm. And she ends up getting shot. I think the fantasy sequences work very well in depicting this woman's state of mind. Mm-hmm. An interesting callback is early on when Severine and her husband are walking down the street. He spies a wheelchair.
It's creepy.
And he thinks it's interesting.
An empty wheelchair, yeah.
An empty wheelchair. So the irony that in the end he ends up in a wheelchair is devastating.
Mm-hmm.
Themes: desire versus love, which is really like lust and sex versus love and romance, because they don't always equate.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes they live on entirely different planes. They don't always intersect. And navigating those two can be the most difficult part of being in a relationship. For Severine, it's clear she loves Pierre, her husband,
Mm-hmm.
but she just can't connect with him in a sexual way.
Well, I don't think he's open or willing or able to hear it either.
We don't learn much about her except we get one flashback where it would appear that when Severine was a child, she was handled inappropriately by an older man.
Mm-hmm.
So that might inform her feelings around sex. That's about it. Her husband seems quite patient with her, does reach out for sex, and she just says, I'm sorry, I can't,
Mm-hmm.
or not now, or maybe soon. So her desire seems to, in stark contrast, require a lot of distance
Mm-hmm.
in relation to like the connection she has with her husband. For her to feel sexually excited, it seems like she needs distance, danger, taboo, which she sounds like a gay man.
Like, yes, where her formative sexual experiences were born in secrecy. So that might cause some difficulties down the road. Yeah. She's in the closet. She's in the bordello closet.
So that's probably the most obvious thing to me. Something that's secondary is, you know, if she's part of this upper crust, bourgeois, whatever, it seems like the film is mocking that sensibility, like that respectability that she's supposed to have.
Right, because the people that are actually drinking that Kool-Aid are viciously unhappy.
Well, or they're also like sadists, voyeurists, fetishists.
Mm-hmm.
They're jealous, petty, violent people. Like it exists everywhere. It's just some people actively in unison pretend that it doesn't exist.
Right. And I think that she is quite seductive to somebody like Marcel, because the fantasy end on his is him having access to a woman of her breeding at all.
That, but getting back to the representation of the brothel, I like that it's not presented as being morally worse than the polite society she belongs to.
I agree. You know what else is interesting? Anise refers to Severine as the pearl. And y'all know there's a lot of vaginal parallel metaphors, symbolism with oysters and shellfish and female genitalia. But, you know, what is a pearl? A pearl is a bit of sand that has, you know, grown into something else. And it's a cold, hard surface. So even in the midst of this den of iniquity that has the potential for sexual liberation, she's still a hard object that is only there to be coveted.
Another theme is fantasy. And then within the film, it's interesting because it feels like these sequences are handled in a way that leaves them open to interpretation, like whether or not you should act upon them or act on them is up to you.
Mm-hmm.
And instead, the film is more about how our fantasies affect our everyday life, maybe.
Yes, and if you completely push them down and ignore them, they can run amok in the real world.
Well, yeah, because Marcel represents the collision of fantasy and reality.
Mm-hmm.
And we were talking about this when the film ended. It's so interesting because I think anyone can relate to making a decision that perhaps wasn't well thought out. Certainly a risk assessment wasn't done. And so you make a decision that in your mind, you know, probably isn't the safest, but it's alluring, it's blah, blah, blah. But the repercussions are so immense compared to the level of investment you initially had. So thinking about Severine and trying to experience something, and then it gets out of hand with her taking this part-time shift at the whorehouse, and then her sort of getting roped in with this very dangerous man who has become attached to her and who ultimately badly harms her husband and leaves him paralyzed and blinded.
Yeah,
she certainly never would have signed up for that.
Yeah, the damage is irreparable.
Right. Lastly, identity. Who is Severine? Because she's not exactly a faithful wife. She's not really a prostitute. I mean, I guess technically she's, well, we hear her more often than not say she doesn't need to get paid. She tells, the only time we hear her talk about money, she's telling Marcel, you don't have to pay.
Yeah. She's a dabbler.
So she's more of like a slut than a prostitute. Is she a victim?
Yeah, of course. She's a victim of patriarchy.
Sure. Yeah.
I mean, who if you know, if women had agency from the time they were born, who would they really be? Who would they get to be?
But is she dominant?
No, I think she's still figuring that out.
So she's submissive.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, she's a complex character.
Oh, definitely. And I think, Buñuel never in any of his cinema was one to give easy answers. And I think he always wanted to provoke. And I think he's a singular filmmaker who is everything he's done. I haven't seen absolutely every film, but a lot of them. I think he's really exciting. I get it, like he's a film that makes you ponder what you're watching in ways that a lot of cinema does not now.
To quickly recap the symbols, the carriage, because in the end, in that Final Fantasy, we see the carriage is empty. But the opening of the film,
I think that's fascinating because I think there are dual things going on in that last fantasy stretch.
Well, I was trying to explain the carriage.
Mm-hmm.
So in the opening,
yes, where it's the vehicle of her sadomasochism.
Right. She's in a carriage with her husband. He pulls over, instructs the coachman to tie her up. They whip her. They humiliate her.
Mm-hmm.
But by the end, when the carriage is empty, it sort of represents her not needing that escape.
Well, that escape, that sexual escape, is not needed there with her husband, who doesn't represent a threat per se anymore, or somebody that she has to tend to his needs and find a way to make that work for her, because he's not going to be able to. Instead, she fantasized him as just being pleasantly able to walk and be near her. He's not threatening anymore. So in one point, Piccoli Husan telling her husband the truth of the wife's her deeds, it's a release in some ways, but a burden in others.
The bells, they recur throughout the film.
Mm-hmm.
Church bells, that Asian man in the brothel holding the bells, mm-hmm. which I think evoke a number of things. Well, sort of transitions us between fantasy and reality.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Or guilt that might be associated with what she's doing, judgment.
Yes.
Like the bells indicate that something's about to happen that we might, have thoughts about.
It cues us for, it sets the stage for that. But also, noises can be used as a way to induce a trance-like state, hypnosis.
Cats appear several times. Mm-hmm. We hear them. Cats, I guess, represent like desire, like animalistic, maybe.
Well, cats are also independent and secretive creatures.
Lastly, flowers. Severine's husband gives her flowers more than once.
She drops the vase of flowers.
So I think that's a pretty basic symbol of like just any gift that a man will give a woman who's unhappy in the relationship, whether it's diamonds or flowers or furs, like the beauty of the thing you're giving me in contrast to the emotional distance we're keeping. Is it a fair exchange? I'm sure most would say no.
It's interesting because the scene where she drops the red, are they carnations? They're not roses. They're very long stems. And the maid has to clean it up. And then she goes to the bathroom. She knocks over a jar of perfume. And I'm not as well versed in perfume, but I do know that Deneuve was the face of Chanel No. 5 right after this. So that's interesting. But also this bottle perfume, as you said, is representative of kind of the gifts meant to given to women to solidify their femininity per se.
Some final notes. Apparently Buñuel didn't like the original 1928 novel, mm-hmm. but accepted the project because he thought transforming a story he didn't like into something interesting would be a challenge.
He certainly did. Deneuve was unhappy with it because she felt very exposed. But she would work with him again just 3 years later in another excellent film. It's not as well known as Belle de Jour, but Hitchcock really liked it. She has a fake arm in it. It's called Tristana. And I would love to, Criterion has that out as well. I would love to revisit that and have you see that too.
Yves Saint Laurent designed much of Deneuve's wardrobe in the film. Mm-hmm. You already mentioned this won the Golden Lion at the 1967 Venice Film Festival. And despite the subject matter, this film is not that explicit at all.
No.
We don't see sex. all nudity is kind of implied. There are a lot of cutaways. I don't even think we see breasts.
Certainly not hers.
So it really relies on suggestion.
Yes.
To relay like the graphic content we know or would expect to be there, certainly by today's standards.
I want to shout out the screenwriter Jean-Claude Carrière, who is a phenomenal writer. Who, I mean, he has over 100 films that he penned, including the Jonathan Glazer film Birth, which is also a favorite of mine. And he worked with Buñuel several more times. The Discreet Charm of the Bourgeoisie is great. Also, The Phantom of Liberty, his adaptation of Mirbeau's Diary of a Chambermaid with Jean Moreau, which I love. Just a vast filmography and always fascinating. I mean, even when on a bad day, Carrière is a interesting storyteller. And also, there's a 2006 sequel called Belle de Jour. So, beauty always, woman always. And the Portuguese director Manuel de Oliveira directed that, starring Boule Ogier, took over for Deneuve. Deneuve didn't come back, but Michel Piccoli does. It's about those two characters.
The ending is interesting to me because I think by 1960 standards, a person watching this film might think that the ending sort of is her punishment. Like, because of her actions, which led to her husband being shot and paralyzed, her punishment is to live the rest of her life caring for this man who really can't do anything for her. So she should have accepted what he was trying to offer her.
See, I think it's actually kind of hopeful because she doesn't have to. She's taking care of him, but she has a maid.
Yeah, but I'm saying a person in 1967 watching this film, like some housewife in Middle America watching this film, might interpret the ending as this is her punishment. She's going to spend the rest of her life tied to this man, having to care for him, not being able to ever feel sexual satisfaction. By my standard today, I feel like, oh, this unfortunately resulted in my husband being incapacitated, but also now that he knows what I was doing, I feel free to maybe explore the life I wanted.
Yeah, I think she's actually kind of free. And I think that maybe it's subversive that her fantasy is to be like, my actions kind of led to my husband.
Well, it's certainly not a happy ending, but
my actions led to my husband being paralyzed. And so I'm choosing to fantasize about him just being fine right in front of my eyes. It certainly doesn't have the effect of a couple short stories I think about watching this, like Kate Chopin's Story of an Hour or Guy de Maupassant's The Necklace, where these decisions are made that bog the main characters down irreparably, or the finale is so depressing when there's this kind of moral. I certainly don't think there's like we're supposed to be left with a moral lesson to be left with at the end of the film.
I think the lesson is don't get married. That's what I would tell people. Anyway, what would you give Belle de Jour?
5 out of 5 for me. I absolutely love this film.
I think it's excellent. I would give it 4 out of 5. I don't think there's much else to cover because I don't know when this will air related to what we have coming up. But is there anything you'd like to leave the people with?
Well, when this posts, I will be in Prague at the Karlovy Vary Film Festival and be back to talk about that a week after I think this drops.
Cannot wait.
I know.
Ta-ta.